So hi everyone, welcome to our second OPHI seminar. So today we are talking about multidimensional energy poverty in Colombia. Our speakers, welcome. We have Angela Granger. She's an economist with a master's degree in economics. Angela is consultant of Inclusión SAS, a Colombian consulting firm specialized in the design and application of instruments and strategies for development, equal opportunities, and poverty reduction. And we have Jaime Giraldo, who is an international business administrator with a master's degree in business management. Jaime is a leader in sustainability, innovation, and energy poverty. And currently he's in charge of the executive direction of Fundación Promigas in Colombia. So just for your information, toilets are upstairs on the right in case you want to go. And please help yourself, we have tasty samosas for you. So, hi, James. Welcome.
Good to see you.
Hello, James.
Any words you want to say, James, before we start?
Just want to say it's great to be here. Looks like it's going to be a wonderful talk. I do look forward to hearing how things are developing. And so I'm just going to let the speakers talk, and then I'll have plenty of questions afterwards. What do you say?
Great. Thank you, James. So, Angela, Jaime, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I will share my screen. Please let me know if you can watch it.
Yes, it's already up.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much for the invitation. We are very pleased to be here sharing these results with you, and I hope we can just have time for the discussion, and I'm sure the ideas would be very useful for us. So today we will present a multidimensional energy poverty index that we developed for Colombia and we launched last year. This was an initiative of the private sector, and especially from Promigas, which is a lead company of the energy sector in Colombia, and Inclusión SAS, which is a consultancy firm specialized in poverty, inequality, and development in Colombia. This work involves a lot of people that cannot be here today, but for all of them, thank you so much for the work. And also we have been working on this year to have the second year of the measure. So the idea today is that we can discuss at least these 4 things. First, why we should measure energy poverty anyways, how we defined the multidimensional energy poverty index last year, the main results for Colombia, and then we can have discussion about the uses of the MPI for the private sector, for the public sector, and some of the potential of the indicators. So why we should measure poverty energy? So energy is, we need energy for almost everything. So we need energies in our households to eat, to have a functional and comfortable situation, to work, to eat, to rest, to prepare for work. We also need energy in classrooms, so have a good experience of learning. We need energy in hospitals, we need energies in the streets. So energy is almost a basic need for everything that we can think about it. And in that sense, we need also energy to overcome poverty and promote economic growth and employment opportunities. So that's why we think this topic is very important, and we not necessarily have the inputs to have a discussion about energy poverty in many countries. So for us, there is an important distinction between energy deprivation and energy poverty. So when we talk about energy deprivation, we are in the space of the access. So we refer more to issues that are related with the affordability and adequate fuel to cook, for example. But when we are talking about the energy poverty, we think about it in a broader approach, which means the functionings that enable people to have a decent quality of life. So the MEPI that we are proposing, we think is an instrument for measure energy poverty based on the accumulation of deprivations that prevent people from achieve functionings that use energy as a mean. So we cannot measure functionings, but we can measure the means that enable people to achieve the well-being. So this is somehow the start point for Colombia. We have some achievements in terms of energy, but we also have some challenges that make this discussion important. So in Colombia, we have achieved a significant access to energy and natural gas, even if we compare with the other Latin American countries. So during the last 60 years, we came from 50% of households with access to electricity to 97% of households with access to electricity. And during the last 30 years, we came from 90% of people with access to natural gas in the households and to 70%, which is a really high percentage, even in the Latin American context. So this is the achievement that made people confuse that we are already done with the energy poverty, but here we are just in the space of the deprivation of energy. And then when we go deeper, we can see that we still have important challenges. For example, the quality of energy. So if we see the map of Colombia, this would be the picture for almost every socioeconomic indicator. So we have a center of the country that is the most developed part of the country, and then we have the periphery, which is more lag in terms of socioeconomic achievements. So we have here the Caribbean region, we have here the Pacific region, and here we have the Amazonic region with no quality of the electricity. Great. So here we have the Caribbean region, the Pacific region, and the Amazonic region without quality of electricity. And this indicator is based on the frequency and the duration of the services interruption. And we will talk more about it later, but what we want to say here is that we still have big challenge in terms of quality of the energy. And then we also have a challenge in terms of cooking fuel. So almost 10% of the people in Colombia is cooking with solid fuel. And this is not just a challenge for the remote areas, which is sometimes people believe that, but also in towns is a challenge. So in towns that are smaller than big cities, the deprivation is 40% almost. And if we look not just poor people, but vulnerable people, the situation is 12% of deprivation. So this is a challenge not just for the rural areas and the poor, this is a challenge in general for the country. And also, I think that we are not used to talk is the assessing goods that transforms energy into well-being. So if we go deeper on that, we still have many deprivations in those devices that allow people to achieve some functionings that are just able through the energy. So for example, 10% of people or households doesn't have access to gas or electricity stove. 30% doesn't have access to refrigerator, and 35% doesn't have access to washing machine. And when we go to the rural areas, of course, this deprivation are greater. So that's why we think this is an important contribution, an important discussion. So we need to increase the modern energy services with quality and affordability. And we need to increase the possession of goods and devices that transforms energy into well-being. But if we want to do that, we need to observe the people that is living in energy poverty. And currently, with our official measures of poverty and the deprivation energy indexes, we cannot see that. So that's why it's important, this indicator that we are proposing. And so we think this would be an input to identify and target this population and overcome the energy poverty in the country. So we call that, the challenges in the last mile, because of course we have come a long way so far until here. We have some achievements in terms of access, but we still need to not leave anyone behind in terms of energy poverty. So how was the index designed? This is a little bit of the story. So this was an initiative of the private sector, also motivated to have inputs for the discussion with the government that is so into the energy transition. So they contact to Inclusión SAS to construct this index. So the main motivation was also identify households with higher energy needs, so the private sector can contribute and to as I say before, have a conversation with the government. So what we did was first literature review about energy poverty. We have many indexes in Latin America, but like in general, were academic proposals. So we try to identify the indicators that these indices include and what they measure. And also we create a technical committee with energy experts and some also multidimensional poverty experts in Colombia to have this discussion and try to make a consensus. We don't want to create just like a list of the supermarket of what people should buy or not, but we want to create an indicator that give like a general idea about the deprivations that enable to people to achieve the well-being. So this is of course the capability approach. So what we have here is the set of functionings in the So what we have here is the set of functionings that allow people achieve the well-being. And then usually we have a subset of functionings that are the basic functionings, which are the focus of the multidimensional poverty indexes. So our proposals is that here there is also a set of functionings that are related with the energy as a mean to achieve well-being that could be almost every functioning. It's really difficult to think about things that doesn't need energy related with the well-being. But our proposal is focused on the intersection of these two subsets and say, okay, let's focus on this multidimensional energy poverty index, on those basic functionings that use energy as a mean to achieve the well-being. So this is more or less our theoretical frame. So there are at least 4 main objectives of this multidimensional energy poverty indices. First is follow the capability approach to understand what is energy for. It's not just we need energy, but what is energy for? Second, to complement the current poverty measures in Colombia and also the deprivation, the energy deprivation measures. We want to index that is easy to comprehend and communicate, and that's why it's very useful, the Carrero-Foster method. And 4, we want to also recognize the complexities about the energy poverty and not say this is not just a thing about the access, but this is a thing about the means that use energy to achieve their well-being. So in that sense, as I said before, the MEPI is an instrument for measuring energy poverty based on the accumulations of deprivations that prevent people from achieving functionings that use energy as a mean. So for the source of information, our main source is our National Households Living Standard Survey, one of the main surveys, which is the Encuesta Nacional de Calidad de Vida. But we also, and this is an innovation, we also use national administrative records for quality of energy, financial services, schools with access to electricity, and centers of early childhood with access to gas or electricity. And of course, we use the Carrero-Foster method. So this is our proposal. We have 4 dimensions and 15 indicators. Our first dimension is related to access to adequate energy and quality. The second dimension is a functional and time-saving housing. Then we have learn and communicate dimension. And finally, we have the territory equipped for well-being. So in terms of the weight, we give a higher weight to the first dimension, which is 30%. And I know that the easy way is say that we have equally dimensions weighted, because otherwise it's very difficult to argue, but I will try. So when we are talking about the energy poverty, even if we need more than the access is like the first step. So we cannot have devices or other type of services related with energy if we don't have access to electricity or adequate cooking fuel. and access, not just access, but access with quality. So that's why after many discussions with the committees, we decide to give a higher weight to this dimension. And then we have the other two dimensions with the same weight. And finally, we give just 10% to the last dimension because we call it like an experimental dimension. Because this dimension, as we will see in the next slide, is just with the information from registers, from administrative records, sorry. So we still have to see how this data, the stability of the data through the years and see if this dimension works or not. So that's why we decide to put 10%. But even if the weight would be equal for our dimension, the results won't be really different. So this is the list of indicators. I don't want to go to each of them, at least you want in the discussion, but I just want to say, so the devices indicators comes from the National Household Surveys. And then we have the quality of electricity that is a municipality indicator. As I said before, it's related with the number of interruptions in the year. That should be more than 38 times during the year, and the duration should be almost 30, or at least 30 hours during the years. So the municipality would be deprived. And the last dimension indicators that, as I said before, comes from administrative records. The rest of them are dummy variables. So if the household have access or not to all of these devices, and electricity and adequate cooking fuel, which is basically not cooking with solid fuel. So let's see some of the main results for Colombia. So what we found is that 80%, 80.5% of the people in Colombia is living in energy poverty. This means like around 9.6 million people. And those poor people accumulate the almost 47% of the deprivations, of possible deprivations. So the adjusted headcount ratio was 0.087, and that means that poor people is accumulating like almost 9% of the possible deprivation if everyone were poor or undeprived in everything. And when we do the dimensional breakdown, what we found is that at least a third part of the energy poverty is explained with the indicators related to access and quality of energy. And another third part is explained by the indicators related with the dimension of learn and communicate. And we know that these results, of course, are related with the deprivations in each of the indicators, but they are also related with the weight that we put in the first dimension. We like to show the results in terms of poor and no poor when we are talking about deprivations, because we think that this is an input for a policy agenda, and also to see if we have some challenges that are just national-wide and some challenges that are focused on poor people. And also because I think this is like a form to not leave one behind, because if we see, for example, electricity, we can think that we overcome that challenge, right? 0% of deprivation in non-poor people. But when we see poor people, we have 8% deprivation. Also, when we see cooking fuel, we have just 1% in non-poor people. So let's not talk about cooking fuel. But when we see poor people, we are talking about almost 50% of the people in deprivation. So we think this is really useful for make some agenda for policy, but also for public, for private sector, that most of the companies, energy companies have a social investment, and they try to impact in a positive way in many of these indicators, as Jaime will tell you before, so sorry, later. And then I just want to highlight, for example, access to internet is a challenge also for non-poor people, almost 30% of people is deprived, but 85% of people is deprived in access to internet. So I think this is very useful. But when we explore the geographical disparity in Colombia is very, very high. So the incidence of energy poverty in rural areas was 11 times higher in rural areas than in cities. So, sorry. So in rural areas, in the most remote rural areas, the headcount ratio was 47.9%, while in the bigger cities was 4.3%. But what is really interesting about this, because we know we are a very unequal country, is that the energy poverty is not just in the remote rural areas, but we also have in smaller towns, and these semi-dense areas are like rural areas that are close to towns. We have around 30% of the energy poverty, or around 30% of people is living in energy poverty. So I think this is very important for the discussion, because the solutions for these areas are different from the solution to rural remote areas. And when we see the geographical location in terms of departments, we see an even bigger gap. So we have some departments that have 70% of the population, more than 70% of the population living in energy poverty. For example, La Guajira, which is at the north of the country, and some other departments here. And then we have some departments in the center of the country that have less than 2% of poverty energy. So there are, like, we need a geographical breakdown to understand the poverty in Colombia. But also, this is one side of the coin, right? When we see where are the poor people is focused in the Caribbean region. And I want to say that not only because I'm from the Caribbean region and I'm living here, but because when we see the situation, this is the Amazonic region in Colombia, and we have very logistic and technical issues to bring energy to this part of the country. Doesn't mean that we have to leave them behind, but this is something that many times the companies point out. But here is a connected country, right? But still have 50% of the poor people is located in the Caribbean region. And just 11% of the people, because these departments are very small in terms of populations, just have 11% of the total poor people in Colombia, energy poor. So I think this is very important. And the last thing that I want to mention about the, if I have time, that I think I have, the last thing I want to mention is that the EPI identifies people who cannot be seen by the national poverty indicators, because maybe many of you have think, okay, but you cannot measure this by the MPI or the national MPI. And the answer is that our national MPI doesn't see the energy perspective. And this is, and I will take the words of Roberto, which was the leader of this preacher last year, when he was the CEO of the firm, the consultancy firm, because he also participated in the creation of the national MPI for Colombia, and that's why we say that this is auto-criticisms. They didn't take into account the dimension of energy. So we don't have any indicator related with the energy. And also because they have the limited perspective of the energy poverty in terms of access. So when you have the limited perspective and you are seeing, sorry, I will just, when you are seeing mostly non-poor people, you say, okay, we overcome electricity and adequate cooking fuel. But then we don't have anything related with the devices that allows transform energy into well-being, and we don't have even anything related with access. So when we do the comparison, we have like almost 12% of the total population is living in energy poverty, but not in multidimensional poverty. So this means that this indicator contributes to the discussion. And if we don't have this indicator, we will just don't see these people, which is very, very, very important. So in the second part of the presentation, we just want to also share with you a little bit of the experience of this indicator in the private sector and also the potential that we see for the public sector. This is very important because I know James and Sabina are very interested on it, and the successful on the indicator is that people can use it. So we have the experience of this private company, which is Promigas, that had been using during the last year, and we also have the experience of the 1 year of the indicator because we launched it last year and we are currently working in the next year of the indicator. So I will let Jaime can talk.
Thank you, Angela. Good morning here in Colombia, everyone. My name is Jaime. You can call me James Giraldo. I'm acting as the executive director of the Fundación Promigas. I'm in charge of the entity right now. And as Angela was pointing out, we were interested into this index because we wanted to go and give the extra mile. We wanted to not just be okay with the coverance of the energy, but we wanted to explore more and what could we do from the private sector to get into this matter. So Angela, please, can you go to the next one? As well, last year, the government was talking about fair energy transition. And when we asked ourselves, what's fair, we didn't have an answer. The government didn't have an answer as well. So we wanted to give this input for the discussion. We wanted to point out that there are energy poor, that the traditional poor index are not seen. So first of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Promigas. We are an energy conglomerate. We have participation in more than 23 companies from the distribution and transportation value chain of gas and electricity. We are in Colombia and Peru. In Colombia, we transport 46 of natural gas, and we provide efficient and reliable energy solutions to our customers of 70.5 megawatts. This was as last year. And in terms of gas, we also distribute gas and electricity to 6.5 million people in Colombia and Peru. Right now are over 7 million. And we have a big participation of the Peruvian natural gas market, up to 94%, and a little bit less in Colombia, up to 38%. So this is our core business, and this is why also we were interested into energy poverty, as you can see. Please, Angela. So first, why Promigas? As I was telling you, we didn't wanted to only have the information of coverage. We wanted to know what energy can impact social or people's life. So energy as the media to transform their lives was a big issue for us. And we also wanted to contribute to the generation of innovative and reliable statistics. That with Inclusión, which we selected as our partner in this matter because they are the experts in Colombia for poverty analysis. So we wanted to bring this to the table in order to find more effective solutions to energy poverty. This is a private sector contribution, but as you can see, many sectors, either private or public, can join us and are called to join us to participate in order to find better and more effective solutions to energy poverty. Please. Colombia and Promigas last year had over 250,000 customers switch from firewood, coal, and waste to natural gas. And this impact up to 1 million people. This is a great impact, and this is how we contribute to closing that gap in energy poverty. First, with our core business, which is connecting gas and electricity to households. Then we also have a non-financial banking solution, which is called Brilla, You can see the last bullet right there. Brilla uses the electricity or gas bill to finance home gas or electric devices, home appliances. And you can pay through the gas or electricity bill. So last year, 41% of the loans issued by Brilla were related to one of those 15 indicators we just saw for the multidimensional energy poverty index. And this is to point out that 96% were given to vulnerable people. We can tell that this index is going to be successful or is successful because it's motivating people to action. The government, other companies from other sectors are quoting this study and are implementing strategies to reduce energy poverty in the country. As I mentioned, we are contributing from the access and quality of the energy and gas that we get to the households. Also, through the financing of home appliances through Brilla. And also we are entering into a new program that will design and implement community infrastructure. For example, in La Guajira, where indigenous communities gather together in the center of their town, we are bringing those places, electricity to those places, so they can have lighting, so they can connect their devices and charge up their devices. It's going on. And I was telling you about the partnerships. We are also looking into doing this MEPI in Peru, and also looking for new entities to collaborate with us for new solutions for the reduction of energy poverty in the country. Please, Angela. And for the concluding remarks, the MEPI sets a threshold more challenging because right now we are looking, as Angela pointed, at 12% of people that we didn't look up before with the traditional poverty index in Colombia. Right now, 18.5% of the country's population is in situation of energy poverty, and a proportion that doubles the percentage of population that cooks with solid fuel. Also, we say that it's a high resolution lens because, as I said, it's pointing out people that were not identified in the traditional poverty indexes of Colombia. And finally, it allows us a better understanding of the problem and make a call to action. As I said, Promigas believe that this can be useful, it motivates others for action to reduce this energy poverty gap in the country. So targeting both public and private policy interventions will guide the investment agenda. Right now, I wanted to remark that Promigas includes energy poverty into its vision and into its sustainability strategy, which it's a new thing for the company and the conglomerate. Before this study, we didn't talk about energy poverty, and obviously it wasn't on the strategy of the company. So it has an enormous geopolitical interest right now in the country's agenda. Energy is a big deal, and the MEPI is an instrument for discussion also of fair energy transition. And this success of fair energy transition in Latin America is associated with overcoming energy poverty. A balance is required between sustainable socio-technical transformations and the energy needs of the energy needs of the entire population. So that would be it right now. And thank you so much. And we are now open for questions, I guess.
Thank you very much. So we will start first with questions here in the seminar room. Then we will go to the questions that are for participants online. So here, anyone has a question for Jaime or Angela? Yes?
Thank you very much, Jaime and Angela. Can they hear me?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so actually I have two questions. I will try to be quick. For the first one, I was wondering, how do you define intensity of energy poverty? I mean, how do you calculate intensity of energy poverty? Because I guess I assume you've been using a proper definition for the context of Colombia, define energy poverty. But when it comes to intensity of energy poverty, I was wondering, how would you define it? Or would you calculate? And secondly, I was wondering if you've been thinking of renewables energy to alleviate the situation of energy poverty in Colombia. Let's say to get out people of the situation of energy poverty. Did you think about any renewables? And if it's the case, which one would be the most appropriate in the case of Colombia?
Thank you so much. I didn't hear the name, but thank you so much for the questions. Are very interesting and make me realize that I forgot something very important about the poverty cutoff. So the poverty cutoff is 30%. So if the people accumulate 30% of the deprivations with the weights that we put on each indicators, they are considered poor. So how we calculate intensity, we use, as I said before, we use the method of Carrero-Foster. So it's basically the same that multidimensional poverty index or global multidimensional poverty index. I will show the. So here, this. Oh wait. So here, this percentage, what says is the how many. I mean, the proportion or the share of deprivation that poor people is having. So as all these indicators finally are like dummy variables, if the people is deprived or not, we just assign this weight and we like have like a sum of the deprivations, and that's what we mean by intensity. So a higher intensity, it means like a more deprivation for poor people. This would be like the uncensored hair count ratio. No, James Foster is here, so I'm nervous about to say something that is not technical, right? So, but yeah, we are is the same that the multidimensional poverty index. And in terms of the second question, definitely we are thinking about renewable forms of energy, and that's why I mentioned the regional differences, because definitely in Colombia, because our geographic characteristics, is very difficult achieve traditional wave of energy in the remote rural areas. So the discussion is mainly renewable forms of energy, but we also is a combination of many forms to fight energy poverty. And we also need traditional forms to these towns that are closer to the cities, and we can achieve in more, like in a less expensive way. So in Colombia, maybe James have more information about this, but for example, in La Guajira, which is at the north of the city, we are exploring forms related with the wine. We also have solar forms. I don't know, James, if you know a little bit more about this, what the company is doing in terms of other forms of energy. Also, they are using gas to generate
We're
electricity.
also right now, Angela, to complement you, exploring wind energy production in that part of the country. The thing is that in La Guajira, Promigas has a main operation. It received the gas from the extraction company, and then it transported to the other main cities in the region, but it doesn't distribute in that department. It doesn't get to the household. It's just the transportation part of the value chain that we operate in that state.
Yes. So as multidimensional poverty index usually point out, we need a solution that have many parts. So we need to combine traditional forms of energy that are cost effectiveness, maybe more adequate for some regions, but we also, and of course, we need renewable energies, and also because the country is stalled into the energy transition discussion. But as Jaime said before, this is important because we need a far energy transition. So if we start to talk about this transition without the component of energy poverty, we will left behind a lot of people. So I don't know if I was clear. If not, just let me know about the intensity and the.
No, everything was clear. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks to you.
We had another question there. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I was wondering if you could detail a bit more on the policy actions taken to tackle energy poverty as well as clean cooking, at least at a national or a more localized district level, because I understand that you've now quantified the energy poverty, but what are some of the things that are actively being done in Colombia right now to tackle this?
Okay, yeah. So we launched this indicator last year, and what we expect is basically like give information to create an agenda to fight poverty. Like currently we are having like a huge debate because traditional way to produce energy in Colombia are having like, I don't know how to say it in a good way, but they are struggling with the government because I don't know how if you can say it better about it. The government is, as I said before, they are trying to go to in a sustainable way to produce energy in Colombia. So gas and fuel, oil are left a little bit behind. So what the last year have been a little bit difficult to improve those indicators related with access. As you will see, in 1 month, we will launch the next year of the measure, which is 2023. All this calculation that I showed you before was for 2022. And we see that the improvement were really short, almost nothing. And inequality of energy, even we are worse than the previous year. So they have it difficult, but I would say that the private sector is doing better. So they are trying to contribute to the fight to the poverty as with initiative, as Jaime mentioned before, which is financial inclusion to access to these devices that are related with the energy and well-being. Also, I don't know, Francisco is here. Francisco can say hi. But Francisco is the CEO of Inclusión SAS. I don't know if maybe you can say in Spanish and we can try to translate some other initiative because he is more related with these associations that are actively doing things in these situations. I cannot think like any special policy actions to fight energy poverty during the last years.
There is actually, before Francisco intervenes, there is actually also a plan to eradicate cooking with wood, coal, and
solid fuel, yes.
And solid fuels, yes, in Colombia. Francisco.
Angie, tengo en la cabeza las comunidades energéticas, el plan de sustitución de leña que mencionaba Jaime. Creo que también el mismo Promigas está haciendo unos pilotos de mezclar hidrógeno también con gas que son muy relevantes.
Yes.
Bueno, y energía solar, eólica, pero pues ese tipo de soluciones energéticas todavía están en desarrollo porque tienen que ser lo suficientemente confiables y sostenibles como para poder suministrar energía para los distintos usos que hay en el país.
Yes, so basically we have also a plan that is called energy communities, and also the plan that James pointed out to comes to zero the people cooking with fuel. But I think most of them are literate by the private sector, as I said before. And also we are doing some stuff related with hydrogen and wind energy and solar energy in those rural, remote rural areas. But also, like, we still need to work on these renewable energies because they have to be confident enough to start to depend on it. So it's still in a first stage. This about the hydrogen gas.
Yeah, one of our innovation projects is being implemented right now in Cartagena, Maybe you have heard of that city. We are injecting green hydrogen into the gas distribution network, but this is also into a innovation project phase right now. But also I wanted to comment about on Halloween. We are launching the second study for multidimensional energy poverty index. You can connect to the presentation. You will see the transition from 2022 to 2023, what happened in this matter in Colombia at a state level, but we are also launching the municipal index. So what we want to do with this index is to get to the governments, local governments, and tell them how their city or their municipality is doing in energy poverty. And we believe that at this level, we can do more in terms of public policy. They can implement actions faster to reduce that gap.
Yes.
Thank you.
James, please go ahead.
Well, thank you for that wonderful presentation. I was most interested in hearing about this, and not the least of which is because I have students in my class who are writing papers on related topics, so it will be of great use to them to be attending here and to hear the video. So thanks a lot. Really appreciate your presentation. I enjoy discussions of private sector getting involved in areas related to poverty. It just seems like a natural, direct approach for action to be jointly undertaken by government and private sector. It could be a case study in how that might be done. I really like the idea of how this is potentially motivating to action. You mentioned that. It's, of course, it's in the early stages, so we'll just have to see. The neat thing, though, is coordination is really facilitated by this. If people care about the issue, then different stakeholders can come together knowing what the truth is and then working on their aspect of the truth in really important ways. Who initiated this way of thinking about multidimensional measures as a coordination device? Why, it was Colombia who did this. So it's now coming back in this structure, not just the MPI, but the MEPI. The other thing I wanted to mention is that quality of employment is something that has been now looked at in a multidimensional framework through the Inter-American Development Bank's Better Jobs Index, but more so in Kirsten Senbrook's work in Chile in particular. So I would definitely advise you to, go to the LSE, where a new paper was published just recently in the Policy Journal talking about quality of employment and how aspects of that are quite similar to what you're talking about with quality of delivery in terms of energy. So that seemed to me to be quite interesting. During your conversation with us, I did want to mention one thing, that because poverty is used two ways, it becomes confusing to the listener, and me included. So I wasn't always sure whether you were talking about poverty as an MPI or income poverty, or whether you were talking about MEPI poverty. It's good to, when you focus on MEPI poverty, to make clear what it is, obviously. So more on that level would, I think, strengthen your presentation. That's just a small critique. The idea here of using capabilities to get at it is, of course, brilliant. That's what you need to do. Think about things, functionings, and in the broad sense of capabilities. But go beyond that potentially. I think there might be a link to a concept that I developed called external capabilities. And if there is, it would be interesting to see if that might be related to one or two of the dimensions. External capabilities are capabilities that don't reside in a person, but actually are obtained because of people around you or other parties. So that's an interesting, different approach to thinking about capabilities and perhaps justifying some of the dimensions. Finally, the financing of all of this is really interesting, because when you're financing the very solution that you're trying to put forward, it's quite helpful, particularly if you have subsidized financing, but irrespective, financing is a huge barrier for families to achieve certain ends they want to achieve. So I found that very interesting, both in the household level and also in the community level, this sort of investment agenda. So that seemed to be very interesting. finally, this links to service delivery. And so if you think of service delivery broadly, this is part of it. And so I thought I'd make that connection to you. Thanks a lot. That's all I have to say. Appreciate it.
I would just react to one of the comments. Thank you so much, James. They are very, very valuable for us. We are also working on it. This is not like last word. So this is very useful to us. So about employment, we will look at it. And also remember like a question that was here in the chat. At the territory at the territory equipped for the well-being, we were looking exactly for, I think, those external capabilities. So our idea was like energy is important not just inside the household, but outside the households. So if I have energy in my household, but students don't have energy in the schools, and hospitals doesn't have energy, and streets doesn't have lights, then I am very much deprived. So that's why that was the idea with the territory equipped for well-being. And also what we have here is the indicators that we achieved to have the good information to include it in the index. We tried to include something related with the hospitals, but the information wasn't good and we had problem with that information, so we didn't include it. And also we tried to include something related with transport, but it wasn't possible too. So that's why we have just 3 indicators, but thank you so much for the recommendations and your comments. And please go ahead in the room.
Perfect. I think there was one more question here in the room, or that's all? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Really interesting. I was just wondering if you've done any robustness testing, not only just for the weighting, because the weighting is very interesting, but it's not very traditional, but also for the indicators. So I kind of could think of what a computer or tablet it could be computer or tablet or smartphone, for example. And I also wonder things like television. You know, what might it look like if we remove that, or if we add another asset instead? So I'm wondering, just have you tried any of that sort of robustness testing?
Yeah, for sure. So for the James Foster's sake, we did all the robustness check, and then they are in the paper that we are working with the OPHI. So you will see it then. We performed choose the cutoff, but also the redundancy test. So yeah, the result that we see here is the result with the analysis of the robustness checks. For example, computer and smartphone could be a little bit redundant, but if you see, and this is more, we will see it this year with the new year that we are adding, they are in separate, they are going to separate directions. So we have high deprivations in terms of computer, but we don't have that high deprivations in terms of a smartphone. Also because they are kind of, you can substitute one with the other one, but we think computers are really important for learn more than communicate. That is the reason that we include the smartphones. So yeah, you can find the robustness checks in the paper that we are working. But yes, and about television, we are having currently a discussion about it because we see that this indicator has a higher deprivation this year, for example. And we are thinking that it's not because of people are necessarily like more deprived in terms, is because of they choose not having television. Yes. So yeah, we are thinking about it. So we are thinking about this indicator. Is it still in the measure of this year? But yeah, we are having a discussion about it because we have been seeing these patterns.
And also we are questioning ourselves to the existing banking services, since they are moving towards the digital scenario, fintechs and all this transition. Go ahead, James.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make another couple of comments. I think that there are ways of readjusting the different dimensions and indicators. It always is good to focus as hard as you can on what the dimensions mean in a very substantial way and try to link it up in that way. The ones that are equally important should be tried to put together first. And obviously, you haven't done the equal importance thing, that's fine. But it may be the case that you kick something out and it becomes that way when you start thinking more broadly of how the dimensions mean something. But I can't advise you on that. I can just say, do your best. It's always hard. God bless you. I agree to put small amounts on things that are perhaps a little bit less, for sure. What I wanted to make my comment on was that you're kind of encapsulating the climate change discussion within the measure itself, in a sense. This fair energy transition, right? You want people to transition to the more sustainable sources of energy, but you don't want to do it in the process cutting off people. And that's the whole thing here. When everyone talks to me about, let's go after the petrol companies, and we no more investment, and there's all this sort of discussion, my first response is, you as consumer, think about how you can cut off what it is you don't want and what you can't. And the fact is that we cannot survive without having traditional energy supplies right now. And so the measure itself is interesting in that it is allowing a measurement of the transition, how it's taking place, and to make sure that it isn't penalizing, in particular, the poorest folks, perhaps. So I think it's a very clever way of thinking about things. It's helpful. It leads us to understand the process of this fair energy transition, and actually acts as a kind of backlog to it, saying, hey, don't go too fast, too far, or else people will be hurt. That's I think, a great thing to actually put in front of people.
I couldn't say it better. Yeah, that's actually what is happening. For example, in Colombia, government has said no more oil or gas exploration, but wait a moment, we have 80% of people, 18% of people living in energy poverty. How we would do with them if we don't have any other solutions? Thank you so much, James, because
Thank you very much. We're running out of time, but thank you, Angela and Jaime, for your great presentation. Thank you, James, for your wonderful comments, and thank you, everyone, for joining us for this seminar.
thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for letting us host this. Appreciate it. Bye-bye now.